Nikki's going to help today. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Sounds Good Makes Sense, a discussion show for the World of Warcraft player. My name is Devilor, and today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Today, I actually am going to talk a little bit more about Sounds Good Makes Sense itself, the show that is. I'm going to... Are you leaving already? She's maybe going to help. She's maybe not. Going to talk about some changes that I'll be making to the format and the schedule, and also a little bit of the why behind how I'm making these changes. So basically, currently, my schedule works kind of like this. On Mondays, I will usually stream. I also have Arctis D&D, which again, youtube.com/playarctis. You can check them out. I think it's PlayArctis on YouTube. I'll double check. It'll be in the comments below or in the description below if it's not. I also post In Search of Answers when there's an In Search of Answers episode, which I'm going to come back to that as well. But Monday is usually kind of a half stream, and then Arctis with In Search of Answers going up in the morning. Tuesday is a full day streaming. Wednesday is technically like my day off, but I actually I put day off in the schedule, but day off is in quotes because I actually spend pretty much the entirety of Wednesday every week working on Sounds Good Makes Sense, and trying to catch up on other things that are generally just falling behind. Usually it's pretty much all day working on Sounds Good Makes Sense. A lot of people don't realize this. Even though it's only like a 30-minute episode most of the time, I put a lot of research into everything that I talk about here on the show. I make sure that I get myself a list of notes because I have ADHD. I will forget to say something if I don't write all this stuff down. So I have a list of notes. I have topics that I want to hit. It takes me time to get all of that sorted out. Then I sit there and I think about the flow of the show, and I think about the structure of how things are going to come together. And I spend some time making sure that it's going to actually be a finished product at the end before I even start filming. So most of the time I've spent probably 3 to 4 hours on an episode before I've even turned on the camera and started talking. After that, I then record the show, and that usually takes me only about, even on the longer side, it's only about 30 to 45 minutes, because at this point I've got the process down well enough that I don't end up doing as many retakes as I used to. So usually it takes me about 45 minutes to an hour to actually record the episode. And then I do the editing afterwards, and I'm just not a very fast editor. I never have been. It's just not something that I'm immediately able to just go through and bam, there you go. So it usually takes me another 3 to 4 hours after that to edit everything together, just because, again, I'm just not fast at it. It's not one of my primary skills as a human to edit videos together. After that, I then do a bunch of prep work. I get it prepared to go out on YouTube. I get it uploaded to Patreon, etc. And on days where everything goes smoothly, that usually means that for every SGMS episode, I'm spending probably about 6 to 8 hours total on one episode. On days where things go super well, sometimes that's faster. And on days where things just aren't clicking and I'm just sitting here going, oh God, what am I even doing? Those are the nights where if you're a patron in Discord, where I tend to put out messages about, patron in general, if you're seeing when they get posted for early viewing, sometimes they get posted at 4 a.m. because that's just how long it was that I was working on it before it actually got finished. And of course that also depends, sometimes things get interspersed with it's my one quote unquote day off. So that's when I have to do other things throughout the week. So Wednesday has been a mess, is basically the long and the short of all that. Thursday, I go post the Sounds Good Makes Sense episode in the morning, and then I go back to streaming all day until Saturday. I stream Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, which is actually probably the closest thing I have to an actual day off at this point. But even on Sunday, I'm still planning out my week streaming and content schedule. I'm recording In Search of Answers, and I'm kind of just catching up on everything else that I didn't get to throughout the week. That's basically my entire week. And if that sounds like a lot of work, it's because it is. Being a content creator, a full-time content creator, is a lot of work, especially when you're still sort of reestablishing yourself or establishing yourself for the first time. But in my case, reestablishing myself, even though I know, and to be clear, this is stuff that I knew going into this. This isn't me sitting here being oh, poor me, I have to work a lot. I knew when I decided that I was going to go back into full-time content creation, I knew I was getting myself into a lot of work. It's a very time consuming, again, especially when you're establishing, very, very time consuming career to go into. I knew all of that. I'm not trying to guess for sympathy or appeal, I guess is the better word, for sympathy right now. just explaining to you what my current schedule has been so that I can then talk about some changes that I'm going to make to that schedule. So going over that again, Monday, short stream, Arctis D&D, post in search of answers. Tuesday, full day of streaming. Wednesday, I'm working on Sounds Good Makes Sense all day. Thursday, posting Sounds Good Makes Sense, then going back to streaming all day on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then on Sunday, I get a little bit of a breather, but I'm also planning out my weekly content schedule and recording In Search of Answers. And it's a schedule that works, but it is starting to cause me a few problems that I think I can resolve with a little bit of refinement to the overall flow and the overall process. And honestly, I believe that I will end up with a better finished product as a result. So here's what the problems at the very least. Let me lay these out first, and then we'll talk about what the changes are that I'm actually making. So a big one is just that Wednesday has turned out to be a real awkward day to not stream. You remember back when I first started doing Sounds Good Makes Sense, I hadn't been laid off yet. I was what's called a furlough at the time, which is basically when a company says, hey, we don't have money anymore. I was working for a small indie company, and they were like, we literally, our funding has not come in. We do not have the ability to pay our employees. We don't want to get rid of you. We want to be paying you, but we can't. We don't have the money. So please don't work until we get this sorted out. So that was the situation I was in at the time, but I was still very much like hopeful that, okay, this is going to get resolved, and then I'm going to go back to having my full-time job, and that'll be great. So in that environment, I wasn't as worried about the fact that I wasn't going to be streaming on Wednesdays. Now I'm a full-time content creator, and honestly, the stream is the vast majority of where my income is coming from at the moment. And I'm not trying to make this about money. I'm just saying, like, for your awareness, I try to be transparent about this stuff. That's like the bulk of where I am able to pay my bills at the moment is streaming, and not streaming on Wednesday is becoming a problem. And if you're curious, the reasons why Wednesday is so important for streaming, one is just in general, like that sort of hump day vibe is a big deal for, like, it's the middle of the week. People they're over their like getting back to work Monday and Tuesday stuff where they're caught up for the week. But they're not quite yet to the Thursday and Friday where they're starting to wind down. So Wednesday just tends to be a big day for people, especially people who work in fields where they can watch streams while they're working. It's a big day for people to be able to do that. And a lot of those people tend to also be the biggest contributors to streamer income. On top of that, more and more game releases are coming out on Wednesdays these days. I've actually missed out on a lot of like day one hype for games that I was otherwise very excited about because I don't stream on Wednesdays. So there's been several games that have come out in recent times that released on Wednesdays that I just wasn't around for, which kind of sucks. It means that you miss out on that initial hype. It means that when you do start streaming that game, you're behind every other streamer. So people are less likely to want to watch your stream because they want to see what the game is like further on. They don't necessarily want to just watch the stuff that they've already seen before or that they're playing themselves at that point. And also just another general reason is that having multiple gaps in a week for your streaming schedule, it's just bad for viewer retention. Essentially, when a new viewer comes to a stream, you want to grab their attention as much as possible. You want them to hit the follow button, etc. And you want them to come back the next day. And as much as possible, that means if you are streaming on a day, you want to be streaming on the next day. If you don't stream on a day, it's not as bad to not stream on the next day. Like taking 2 days off in a row is less bad than streaming for what I've essentially been doing, streaming for 2 days, taking a day off, streaming for 3 days, taking a day off, because I'm ending up with more of those situations where a lot of the viewers that are new viewers coming into my stream as I'm trying to grow, they're people that then I'm not around tomorrow, so they don't come back and they forget about me. That's kind of more of a like long-term issue than anything else, but it is the sort of thing that is problematic for the growth of the stream and for myself as a content creator. So again, a lot of what I'm talking about here is just trying to give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of why I'm thinking about this stuff and what it is about this role and about this career that pushes me in this direction. Another sort of secondary issue that I've been running into is just that In Search of Answers in general has been hard to support as a weekly show. And this is just entirely because, and I don't expect this to be a permanent problem either, but this is entirely just because I'm still getting my presence here on YouTube reestablished. I'm still getting back into the swing of things, which means that there are weeks where I only have 1 or 2 questions, or maybe the only questions that I got were ones that I had answered like 2 or 3 episodes ago. And it feels weird to just go back to that. So like, it just feels like it's non-content if all I'm doing is repeating what I said like 2 weeks ago. And in some cases, they're questions that I just don't feel comfortable answering. Like there's been a lot of questions that are very much like, what do you think about this specific person who worked at Blizzard? Like that's weird. I'm not going to go into that. Um, in most cases, I'm not going to go into that sort of thing. There are a few people that I wouldn't mind talking about like that, but we're not going to get into that right now. That's a completely separate thing. Anyway, so that means that In Search of Answers, basically on the weeks where I don't have an In Search of Answers episode that's going up, with one exception recently where I just had allergies so bad that I actually couldn't talk for like more than a couple of minutes without having to blow my nose or sneeze or both. That was a rough weekend. But for the most part, when I haven't had an In Search of Answers episode come out, it's just because I don't have the content to produce, and I don't feel like I'm producing a full episode. I could like grab like one question and be like, here's a quick 15-minute episode that just answers this one question. But that feels a little bit, I don't know, that feels a bit meh, honestly. I think I'd rather make sure that if you're going to sit down to listen to an episode of something that I'm putting out, that you know, at least with some relevant amount of consistency. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute too. But with at least some amount of reliability, you know that you're going to have something that will keep you entertained for a little while. Like this is meant to be a long form talk show. This is not a short form TikTok thing. This is not a YouTube Shorts thing. This is meant to be something. It's honestly, I think of this more and more like a podcast every day. It just happens to be on YouTube, and you happen to have the ability to watch my face as I'm talking. And sometimes I'll use little visual aids and stuff, but usually it's just me talking. So the expectation in that case is you are probably like putting this on and then tabbing over and doing something else. Or if you're a patron, maybe like patrons do have access to audio only versions of the shows. So maybe you're just listening to it. Either way, I'm getting off on a tangent right now. The reality is that at the moment, it's difficult sometimes for me to put together what feels like a full episode of In Search of Answers, just because we are still at the point where I am building up my presence enough on YouTube that if it just happens to be a week where not as many people had questions, I might just not have questions, which is occasionally a problem. That's why sometimes there isn't an ISOA that goes out. Another issue is that I've been trying to cram production of both shows, both In Search of Answers and Sounds Good Makes Sense, into one day. I've been trying to do everything in one day, which means that if I have difficulty with filming for some reason, or if my brain is just not working with me on a given day, that I have to muscle through it and I have to do it anyway. And then I end up posting the video at 4 a.m. and stuff like that. So those are a few of the issues that I'm trying to resolve with the changes that I'm going to make, which I will now get into. So for now, at the very least, for until I decide to change my mind later on, or until it becomes clear that things need to be changed again and so on, here is more or less the plan of what we're going to be getting into. First of all, I'm going to pet this cat because she very much wants some pets, and that is important. We must pet the kitty. Always pet the kitty. Is that enough pets? Okay, I'm going to continue petting the kitty while I tell you about the changes that we're going to make. First thing, we're going to merge In Search of Answers back into Sounds Good Makes Sense. So we have one show a week. Kind of like if you remember back when I was first doing Sounds Good Makes Sense, I was occasionally having like a little Q&A section at the end of the show. We're just going to make that the regular format again until we reach the point where I can then split In Search of Answers back out and more reliably have enough content for two shows in a given week. So that's very much, I'm kind of envisioning that as a temporary thing while we're still reestablishing here on YouTube. But we're going to merge back into one show, and we're going to have that dedicated Q&A segment at the end of the show. My goal is for this to then mean a longer runtime for the show. Like I'm kind of mentally aiming for around 45 minutes on average, but I very much don't want to get to the point where I'm like padding episodes just to fill time. So if it happens to be the case that whatever topic I've selected for the week is just something that doesn't take long to talk about, Nikki's very, very interested in the conversation right now. If it ends up being something that it doesn't take me that long to get to my points, I'm not going to waste your time reinvigorating or restating my points, going back over stuff that I've already talked about. I end up doing that naturally a lot of the time anyway, just because of how I tend to talk. So I'm not going to intentionally then go and repeat myself a whole bunch in order to fill time, or sit there and try and come up with weird things to speculate about that don't actually make any sense just because I need to keep talking, just because I'm trying to reach some sort of runtime goal. On the flip side, that also means that we might eventually, and occasionally, I actually expect this will happen, we'll have episodes that run for a little bit longer, because if it's a topic that I want to talk about where I have a lot to say, and I think there's a lot of good points and a lot of information that needs to be shared about this particular topic, and we also happen to have a whole bunch of really good questions that I want to get to, yeah, we'll go a bit longer. Hopefully that ends up feeling somewhat natural. That's something that's going to be a little bit experimental, as I'm still just kind of getting back into the stride of this new way of doing things. But that's kind of the plan for now. We're going to one show a week, and that's going to be a combination of Sounds Good. I'm still just going to call it Sounds Good Makes Sense. But it'll be, we have a topic that we talk about. I analyze that whole topic. I get everything that I want to say done about that topic. And then we go through any questions that may have come in. So that way we still have the Q&A segment. They're just being put into one show, into one complete package. One other advantage that I forgot to mention in the midst of that whole ramble that this sort of combination of the two shows has is it means if there's only one or two good questions that come in, like this is a really good question, I really want to talk about this, but I only have this one thing to talk about. I don't have to be like, well, I'll save that for a future episode. And then you sit there with your question not being answered for weeks at a time. And eventually it gets answered, but maybe by then you don't care anymore or whatever. If I only have one or two good questions, I can still just include those questions. Like we can just tack that on the end in the Q&A section. And I don't have to sit here and be like, I have to wait to answer this question until I have a good opportunity to put out a full episode. So I really think combining the two of them is going to result in a better overall product and a better overall content for you all to enjoy. It's just going to be a little bit different, and it does mean that there's one less episode going out in a given week. I'm also changing up the schedule a little bit. You probably expect this after all the talking about Wednesday that I was doing earlier, but we're going to be recording on Sunday and then releasing on Tuesday. And the reason that's important is because that gives me that full extra day, that gives me that Monday to be able to figure out any editing that still needs to be done, any scheduling and so on. If for whatever reason it takes me all day on Sunday to finish recording everything, then I am still able to just say, okay, at least I've got everything recorded. I'll edit it tomorrow and we'll get it out that evening. This has a few other advantages as well. One is that it actually gives me a better opportunity to consider at some point bringing in an editor to handle this for me without subjecting them to my weird, like, hey, by the way, it's literally midnight now and I just finally finished recording. Can you get this edited in the next 30 minutes so I can put it up on YouTube and get it out to patrons? That's one advantage that this will give me, is that little bit of extra time. It also means that it'll have more reliable early viewing for patrons. Like ostensibly being able to see these episodes early on Patreon is a perk that you should be able to enjoy. And most of the time I think that I get them out like early enough that it still feels like it's at least something. But it does end up being a little bit flat when I'm posting it at 4 a.m. and you're not going to see it until it's posted on YouTube already anyway, because of how the scheduling works. So on weeks where I'm still going to post it as soon as it's done on Patreon. So on the good weeks where I just get everything done on Sunday and it's fine and it's done and it's packaged up and it's edited and it's ready to go, then patrons will get extra early access to it. But you will at the very least be getting it on Monday. And you will be getting it much earlier than when you're already asleep on Monday before you actually see it. So that will hopefully make that experience a little bit better for patrons. There are a couple of potential risks. One of the biggest ones is really just the idea of like, there's possible that I record something on Sunday and then by Tuesday it's no longer valid because some new information came out or something, in which case, we'll figure it out. We're going to have to experiment with that a little bit. I have to say I have not had that issue yet with Sounds Good Makes Sense. And I think a big part of that is because most of the time I'm just giving my opinions on general topics anyway. This isn't so much a news show as it is an opinion show. So a lot of the times what I'm saying doesn't have any real timeliness to it. It's just something that's like, here's what I think about this situation sort of stuff. So most of the time it doesn't matter. But obviously Tuesday tends to be a big release day, especially for World of Warcraft, because that's when resets are. It's usually when seasons start. Incident like Monday tends to be, at least Monday for me on the West Coast in the US, tends to be when expansions release these days, which is going to make this extra weird as well. But anything that I need to talk about for that Tuesday reset or that Monday release, I can just put that in the previous episode and then have that be, I don't know, something else. We'll talk about something else in that meantime. So there are some risks there. I think that's something that we can just play by ear a little bit and we'll figure out as we come to those issues. I also want to try to lock in a little bit more of a natural flow to the show with a little bit less of the hyper jump cutting constantly. You've probably noticed in Sounds Good Makes Sense, most of the time what I'm doing, if it hasn't been obvious already, what I'm doing is I'm reading a note and then I'm saying my thoughts on that note. And then I'm going back and reading a note and then I'm saying my thoughts on that note. And as time has gone on, I've gotten a lot more conversational and just thinking through things, and my notes have become less verbose, and I've moved away from scripting entirely. after the first couple of episodes. I've gotten much more into the habit of, here's a thought, now complete that thought once you're talking to the camera sort of stuff. But I want to try and embrace that a little bit more, get a little bit more podcasty with this, get a little bit more personal with this. A lot of people have mentioned that they actually enjoy when I ramble a little bit. To me, it sometimes just comes off as me rambling, but some people have mentioned that they enjoy that because it's like, it expresses a little bit better why I'm thinking the way that I'm thinking about something, rather than me just like stating an opinion and just being like, that's my opinion. That's how I feel. This is the fact now. Go on with that. Being able to sort of watch and listen through how I'm arriving at a thought might be a little bit beneficial and might help a little bit more with explaining why I feel that way in the first place. So I hope that ends up feeling a little bit more natural, ends up feeling a little bit more like we're just here having a chat about something. We're just a little bit less formal, a little bit more personal. I want to try and nail that vibe a little bit more. I feel like in the later years of the Weekly Marmot, that's very much what I was doing as well. The early episodes, which unfortunately are the only ones that you can still see, I was still very much like following a script more or less. But in the later episodes, it ended up being much more about, here's a topic, let's just talk about it. Let's just see what comes to mind and what sort of bits of information about this are worth talking about, and what sort of thoughts can form at the top of my head as I'm trying to have this sort of discussion about this particular topic or whatever. So I want to try and nail that natural flow a little bit more. And I actually think that having the Q&A section at the end of this will help nail that down a little bit more too, because we'll be switching a little bit more from the just straight up, here's a topic and here's my complete thoughts on it, and now we're done, into something a little bit more discussion focused towards the end. So hopefully that ends up feeling a little bit more natural. Hopefully that ends up feeling a little bit better in terms of overall content for the show. And I'm excited about it. I think it will be something that adapts to the way my brain works a little bit better than me trying to sit here and just pile everything out. Now, obviously, I'm still going to be taking notes. I'm still going to be doing all the research and stuff that I do in advance, because I want to make sure what I'm saying in this show is always like reliable information. I don't want to be sitting here telling you stuff that's like, I think it might be kind of like this, and presenting that like it's a fact if I'm not confident that that's actually how something is, or if I have at least the means to figure out what something is going to be like and figure out what the facts are in advance. I always want to do that because misinformation is a bad thing. I don't want to be spreading any of that. I don't want to be starting rumors or anything like that here. That's not what this show is about. Speculation, absolutely. Starting rumors because I just didn't bother to look something up in advance, that's some rookie crap. I'm not going to do that here. I am going to keep as much as possible of the angle of the like discussion show for the WoW player. I've talked about this a few times here on the show and elsewhere. But the idea is, this is a show that is for someone who likes World of Warcraft. This isn't a show about WoW directly. It's not a World of Warcraft show. It's a show for WoW players. And the distinction there is largely just that WoW players probably have more interests than just World of Warcraft. WoW players have probably played other video games in the past. WoW players are probably generally interested in the things that are occurring throughout the gaming industry that might affect WoW in the future, but aren't necessarily something that is directly now like a new feature coming into the game or whatever. There's a lot to talk about that a WoW player can, and I believe should, be informed about and have like some amount of analysis and speculation about what's going on with it. That isn't necessarily like whatever the new expansion is or anything like that. So we're going to start towing the line a little bit more that direction for the show. I'm going to start looking for a lot more topics that are gaming related and of interest to a WoW player, as opposed to just straight up like, what is the new thing happening in WoW? I'm saying that the topic I have planned for the next episode, on which I'll be recording on Sunday, is very much a WoW topic, but the question and answers and all that stuff, I feel like this is another thing where I think having the Q&A as part of the ending of the show will help nail this vibe that I'm going for. That's kind of the angle that I want to start trying to lean into more a little bit for the show. As far as the rest of my schedule, my stream schedule is now going to be going to usually Monday and then all the way through Saturday. So Monday we'll have that half stream before Arctis D&D. I'm going to keep, just been doing the half stream before Arctis D&D. I haven't been doing the coming back to the stream after D&D like I was doing during the streamathon. I think I'm going to keep that as pretty much a streamathon only sort of thing, which there will probably be another one of those in the next couple of months. I'm not in a big hurry to get to one, but that will probably be a thing that occurs again in the future. But then Tuesday through Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Those will all be streaming days that I do. And then Monday, as a result of all this, Monday with its half stream could be the sort of thing that is much more easy for me to say, okay, actually, I still have a lot of work to get done on this SGMS episode. So I need to drop my Monday stream. I'm going to drop that half stream, say, sorry, everyone, no Monday stream this week. But then we still have the Tuesday through Saturday, like 5 days in a row of streaming. And I think that will just feel a lot better for both purposes. It means that I will be able to take the extra time to really make sure that Sounds Good Makes Sense is as good as it should be when it goes out. When I need that extra time, I have the ability to take it. Since I'm also planning out my schedule for the week on the same day as I'm doing this, it's really easy for me to just at that point say, dang, it's like 9 p.m. and I still haven't even hit record yet. I'm probably going to need tomorrow to be able to finish this episode. So let's just say no Monday stream this week. And then Tuesday through Saturday will still be around. And then that Monday stream will just be a nice bonus on the weeks where I don't need to take that extra time for finishing up Sounds Good Makes Sense. I think that's just going to end up feeling like a much better overall schedule. And it's going to not only allow me to have better stream content and more reliable and consistent stream content, but it's also going to allow me to make sure that I can actually take the time to make this show here on YouTube what I want it to be, instead of, as what has happened on sometimes, like I've definitely had days where I finish editing, I put everything together, and I feel like, well, I'm not done. This isn't great. There are things that I would there are retakes that I would like to do. There are points that I know I forgot to make in the middle of this episode. There are things I would like to add to this, but I don't have time to do that because it's now 4 a.m. and I need to finish rendering this episode and get it scheduled so I can go to bed and post it in the morning. Having the ability to take that extra time where I can, when I need to make sure that this show is always something that I feel good about when it goes out, I think is going to be a big deal. And I'm really hopeful that the result is something that comes through to you guys as well when you're watching. So in summary of all of this stuff that I'm talking about, I'm just going to go over the new schedule once again. I will have one show going out on YouTube a week. That'll be called Sounds Good Makes Sense. That will incorporate what was In Search of Answers. And at some point in the future, once the YouTube channel is blown up and I'm the next Mr. Beast, well before that, don't worry. But once we get the momentum going here on YouTube that I'm hoping and I believe we can reach, we will almost certainly then branch the shows back out again once I've reached the point where I can actually be able to do that. But for now, one show a week. That will be one that goes out on Tuesdays. I will be streaming Monday through Saturday as a result. Most of the time Monday, sometimes maybe not, depending on what's going on schedule-wise. But Tuesday through Saturday for the absolute no matter what. If you are a patron, you should start getting earlier access than before to new episodes that are coming out, just because this new schedule will allow me to do that much more reliably. And I will continue to have questions and answers. If you have any topics that you want me to cover, if you have any questions that you want me to answer, please do continue leaving those in the comments. That's the best way to get them. Or if you are a patron, you can either leave it as a comment on the posting on Patreon, or there's a form that you can fill out that I can reference back to be able to find the question and make sure I include it here. Speaking of which, I do have a few questions that I will be getting to in the episode that I'm recording on Sunday. But there was one that I wanted to make absolutely certain that I got to in this episode that's going out today. And this is from Doodle Wild Thing, who came through on Patreon. So thank you so much for being a patron, who asked, you've been playing WoW with the community for Season of Discovery. Do you plan on doing the same for the War Within? And if so, do you have any plans on which server you're going to play on? So as a reminder, if you are playing Season of Discovery, we are playing, we have a community guild called Sounds Good. It is on, we're playing Alliance. I know, I'm sorry. It's Sloot's fault, actually. But we're playing Alliance. We're on the Wild Growth realm on North America servers. And we are actually looking to fill out our roster a little bit to start getting into Molten Core here very soon. So if you're looking for a guild and you happen to be Alliance on Wild Growth, you can pop into my Discord. There's information in there on how to join the guild. Please do let us know. We would love to have you. Anyway, that's what we're doing right now for Season of Discovery, talking about the War Within. So yes, I do very much want to be able to play the game with the community for the War Within. It's one of my favorite things about having a community like this, is being able to like have these days where it's like, yeah, let's just have some fun. Let's go play with the community and let's do some stuff. I'm not sure if that's going to be a guild or otherwise. And I'm also not sure how much realm actually matters in the War Within. because pretty much everything is going both cross realm and cross faction. Everything that isn't already is pretty much going cross realm and cross faction in the War Within. If it does matter, the server I'll be playing on is Eridar. That's where all my characters are, and that's where they've been since the beginning of time. Literally, before World of Warcraft came out, I already had all my characters on there. That's not true. But I'll be playing on Eridar, and most of my characters are Horde, but again, I don't know how much that matters. I don't know if it's going to be. I don't know if a guild is the right way to go for the War Within. Mostly because we have alternatives that might be a little bit better. There's the essentially the communities option that Blizzard has for the modern game that I think could actually be a better way to go about this. And I'm going to look into setting one of those up sometime around when pre-patch hits. So in the very near future, we'll look into setting one of those up for the War Within. And I'll make sure to share the invite code and everything for that once that's actually set up. The reason that I think a community might be better than a guild is because a lot of people, especially in the modern game, they already have guilds. And I also don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what my plans are in terms of raiding for the War Within as of yet. I would very much love to, like, I would absolutely love to be able to like get back into like serious hardcore World of Warcraft mythic raiding. I don't know that I have time for that. I don't know that I can afford to set the time aside for that as a content creator these days. It's something that basically becomes your entire bag when you're a content creator and a mythic raider. And I don't know that that is in the cards for me, unfortunately. And when it comes down to things like normal and heroic rating, I may end up deciding to do that. I may not. I'm kind of undecided on this as of yet. I'm the sort of person that when I'm rating, as much as possible, I want to be doing it as hardcore as I can, especially when it gets to like, when there's the option for mythic rating, that's what I would want to do. If I can't do mythic rating, I'm not sure how much I want to do normal and heroic rating instead as an option. I may very well decide that I do. I don't know yet. We're going to have to see how I'm feeling about things once the War Within comes out, how I'm feeling about things as we continue with Season of Discovery, and so on. I definitely don't think I have time for rating in Season of Discovery and in the War Within. And right now, the one that excites me more is Season of Discovery, just because that's the one that I feel like I can put the necessary amount of time into more reliably. And I'm also doing a lot of other things with my scheduling these days, and I'm still trying to play other games. I don't want to be just a one game content creator anymore. So that's kind of where my head's at with all of that. Which means that ultimately the reason that I mentioned all of this is coming back around to the concept of playing with the community. It will probably end up being more like a Mythic Plus sort of thing. Like, let's do some M Plus runs. Let's run some keys. Let's grab some people. Let's grab whoever's around. Let's just push some keys, and we'll just have some fun. Especially if like I'm streaming at the time, we'll just jam out some keys, and it'll be a good way to get everyone their great vault stuff done for the week and so on. I feel like that's probably the more of the vibe that I'm going to want to end up going with for the War Within. I also just love Mythic Plus. I am someone that does not get tired of Mythic Plus. I just don't. I just enjoy it constantly. I just really like I'll play alts and stuff, and I'll just pound them through Mythic Plus as much as possible because that is really fun to me. I just really genuinely enjoy it. So that's probably where we're going to end up for playing with the community for the War Within. TBD on rating entirely, but that's part of why I think that having a community instead of a guild is the smarter play, because you can be in as many communities as you want. You can only be in one guild. So if you want to join a raiding guild, if you're someone who is going to be raiding in the War Within, I don't want to ask you to leave your raiding guild to come do Mythic Plus with me sometimes. It seems like a smarter play is to have it be something where you can join this in addition to your core guild that you're raiding with and you're playing with and you're doing all your stuff with them. And this other thing is just something to do sometimes with a content creator that you happen to watch. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this strange but hopefully useful episode up. I don't even know necessarily if I should really call this an episode of Sounds Good Makes Sense, but I think we're going to anyway. So there it is. It's kind of a proof of concept for the new flow for the show. Please give me any feedback that you have. Any feedback whatsoever, please let me know. Leave a comment. Any topics that you'd like me to hit, please hit those up down below. Any questions that you have that you'd like me to answer, please hit those up. Leaving a comment on YouTube, again, or over on Patreon. If you're a patron, there's that form you can fill out for questions. Any of the above. I really want to know what you guys think about this new flow. I think it's going to work better for me, but I want to make sure that I'm still creating content that you all want to enjoy and you all will have a fun time and enjoy, watching or listening or whatever it is that you're you're doing. I don't know what else the option would be, watching or listening or consuming intravenously. I don't know what that third one would be, but anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks again so much, everyone, for being here on this crazy ride back into full-time content creation that I've been on. It really means the absolute world. And I hope we can continue doing it and continue having a lot of fun with it. Cool. I'm out of here. Peace.